Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Wild, Wild Death, the show where we talk about all the ways people left this earth in the Old West. Each week, we spin the wagon wheel of untimely demise, and whatever manner of death it lands on, we tell you a story about it. I'm Leslie Sedali.
I'm Jack James Busa.
And I'm Susan Busa-Leshner. So how's everybody doing today?
Great.
Very well. I'm excited for another story of morbid tales from the from the Wild West. And I was telling you guys that in my mind, this podcast and the information and the stories I'm getting from it, I've become very like I said, at least in my mind, very popular at parties. I don't know if I actually am or in my mind I just am. I'm just like retelling all these stories at parties, and people sort of look at me like, okay, good for you.
I like that you said in your mind.
So anyway, I'm excited to hear another one.
Okay, Leslie, if you would spin the wagon wheel of untimely demise, and let's see what we're going to hear a story about.
I'd love to. Here we go. Spinning. And here we are. It is Death by Duel today.
I have a story about death by duel. Do you guys mind if I tell it?
Wait, please tell the story.
Please.
All right. In the 1870s and 80s, Hell's Half Acre was the most lawless place in the new cattle town of Fort Worth, Texas. The Half Acre was filled with gamblers, prostitutes, and shady characters. It was the kind of place where it was all right if a lawman partook in a little criminal activity on the side. But in order to survive, a man had to be handy with a gun and willing to kill. On the evening of February 8th, 1887, two men decided to let their guns settle their dispute. In a scene right out of a Hollywood Western, they faced off. Only the fastest to draw would survive. This story is called Duel in the Street.
It does sound like a Hollywood movie.
Yes, it does.
The instigator of this duel was Timothy Isaiah Courtright. Born in Illinois in 1845, at age 17, he lied about his age and enlisted as a soldier in the 7th Iowa Infantry under General John Logan, fighting for the Union during the Civil War. By all accounts, he was a good soldier, fought bravely at Vicksburg, and he even took a bullet for General Logan during the war, which I'm sure Logan appreciated.
I bet.
Yeah, I would appreciate it too. Somewhere about this time, Timothy started answering by the name Jim, and it's not totally clear why, but one theory is that a few soldiers accidentally called him Jim instead of Tim, and Courtright just went with it. After the war, Jim worked for a time as an Army Scout, but Jim's outstanding talent was being very quick with a gun. He wore 2 6-shooters on his hips with the butt end of the gun facing forward. And instead of reaching across his body for the gun, Jim drew with his right hand from the right hip, and he was an excellent shot.
Did you say that when this Courtright guy is wearing his guns, instead of the handles facing to the back, they're turned around and facing to the front?
Yes. So I would imagine it'd be if you're drawing with your right hand, it's just easier get out of the holder.
The butt handle is facing forward, right? So you'd have to grab the handle and flip your arm around.
Yeah,
it seems inefficient.
It seems inefficient. If you just have the handles going backward, you could just pull them out.
No, because
right?
I disagree actually. Because if the handle's going back, okay, so can't see this. Whoever's listening, I'm acting this out. So if you have it to the back, you have to sort of arch your shoulder back to pull it out and then forward. But if it's forward, you pull it out and your shoulder goes back and you're ready in a position to shoot.
Maybe so, but you still have to grab it and then turn your hand around so that the barrel end is facing forward.
I actually can see now the shoulder movement is larger
Yes.
and the hand movement is smaller. So I guess it would be kind of efficient.
I think it'd be
it's
easier to shove it in your belt. No, not have a gun belt, but just shove it in the top part of your pants, grab it and shoot.
Well, I guarantee
me.
there's another wild, wild death story about someone who did that, and it did not end so well for whatever was in it.
I don't know. I don't think they all wore, like gun holsters and stuff. I think they probably just
There must be a reason why they didn't put their guns in their pants, because someone must have had a horrible story about that.
I think if I was going to do one, I'd do a holster that went like a crossbody bag. And the gun would be there, and you just do that. Just grab it.
That's a surefire way to get shot. It's just
You keep it in your purse. Is that what you're saying?
No, yeah, well,
Yes.
it'd be a holster, but it'd be going across your chest, and then you could just grab it, and then point it, just shoot, instead of just flipping it around business.
Well, evidently he knew what he was doing, because he was a really sharp shooter and he was a really fast shooter. That's what he was known for. He was a really good gunman. So I'm going to take his advice for whatever gunslinging I may or may definitely will not be doing in the future. Anyway, when he was about 25 years old, Jim married a woman named Sarah Weeks. And it turns out that Sarah was also a great shot. And for a time, Jim and Sarah actually performed as sharpshooters. At some time or another, they decided that life in show business just was not for them. Fort Worth had just incorporated itself as an official town. Jim and Sarah found their way there in 1873, hoping to find success as farmers. But they just weren't cut out to be farmers. So Jim went to town looking to get work doing something he was good at, using a gun. And he was hired first as a fireman and then as a jailer. While Fort Worth is now officially incorporated, the new city government wasn't exactly governing the city yet. And at this point, Fort Worth was still pretty much a frontier town, and as such attracted cowboys on benders, prostitutes, gamblers, drunks, and general, no offense, lowlives. It also attracted a who's who of lawmen and outlaws of the period. These are like the all-stars of outlaws. Wyatt Earp, Bat Masterson, Etta Place, Butch Cassidy, the Sundance Kid, Doc Holliday, and Luke Short. The criminal element did create a ruckus. At the same time, these same prostitutes, gamblers, drunks, and general lowlives brought a lot of money into the town. Most of this activity was crammed into an area of town called, and I love what they called this, Hell's Half Acre.
Doesn't it sound like someplace you'd want to go?
Hell doesn't get a full acre. Hell gets a half acre. That said, the businesses there did want some kind of order, namely less bloodshed, but they didn't necessarily want law because they're making a lot of money off of all these people coming in and doing whatever the hell they want. But they just want, like a little less death.
Right.
But as a result, Fort Worth had a fairly high turnover rate for the position of marshal. The first marshal who was elected quit because the wages were too low. The second marshal was originally a doctor, and he handled rowdy drunks by drugging their drinks. That's one way to do it. Perhaps not the most ethical doctor.
Was he doing like, look over there, and then he put stuff in their drink,
Yeah, exactly.
What a terrible guy.
Wow.
A horrible person, but I guess if you don't want to be shot out by this crazy ass town. That's a weirdly smart way to do it. I don't know.
Maybe he shouldn't be marshal.
Yeah, I think you're correct. He resigned anyway. He resigned after 8 months. The third marshal won a special election and served for 10 months before he also quit because of low pay. Give the marshal some more money, man. There was yet another special election, and a new marshal was so inept that when troublemakers would shoot at his feet for fun, he would run away. After 3 months,
That's what I do.
The city council suspended him and he quit. Not cut out to be marshal. So, at the next election, Courtright ran for marshal and he won by only 3 votes, 106 to 103.
A win's a win.
Win's a win, baby. So our Jim Courtright was marshal of Fort Worth. Also, the railroad had just recently come to town. So Fort Worth was in the middle of a huge boom, and the influx of people created energy, but also more crime. So Jim Courtright, his job as city marshal was according to the revised ordinances of the city of Fort Worth to, quote, quell riots, disorder, and disturbances of the peace within the limits of the city, and take into custody all persons offending against the peace of the city.
Well, it sounds like they're going to need a bigger jail.
Yeah. Exactly, because with all the drinking
yeah, if it's that crazy, Leslie, you ever been in places where they have these, this is the old jail of the city?
Yes.
Yeah, and they're just like a tiny little coat closet, right?
Yep.
Well, they don't even have enough money to properly pay the marshal. So they're like, I don't know what to do about all this crime. I have no clue. And then they don't want to pay the marshal enough money. They don't want to have a bigger jail. They're like, who knows what the solution could possibly be?
You know what? If they're not paying the marshal very much, I wonder how many deputies there were.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because, if everybody else is making a ton of money and you're scraping along, you'd have to find another way to make money.
But they're sort of like half-assing the whole law thing. They're like, we want to have less people dying, but we still kind of want to do whatever the hell we want. Anyway, Fort Worth is getting to be way bigger. People are coming in, more crime, and there's, a lot of drinking, gambling, and prostitution stuff that was so financially successful that Courtright was barely hands-off enforcing most laws. Courtright might not have ended crime, but he did reduce murder rate, and he also ended 4 or 5 lives in the name of law, of course.
You know what? When we talk about the Old West, does anybody else, has it ever struck anybody how casual people are about, killing each other?
About killing people, yes. All the time.
If somebody killed 4 or 5 people now, they would be considered a serial killer.
Yeah. But back then it was I didn't like the way you were looking at me and you stole a bottle of whiskey from my house. Die.
Even if a marshal, a sheriff or a marshal did that now, we'd have a discussion. You would be put on probation or you would be suspended for a while. But here, 4 or 5, and then have a drink. Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah, they're all in a day's
Yeah.
Courtright served as the marshal for 2 terms, but when he lost the 3rd election, he left his family behind and headed to New Mexico, where he took a job working for his old Civil War commander, John Logan, at the American Valley Cattle Company. Evidently, Courtright's experience as a lawman and a gunslinger were the right resume for the job, which was pretty much to deal with cattle rustlers and perhaps problematically to force people off their land so the cattle company could gain control of it.
I bet that's his first job. To force people off their land. That's definitely his
first job.
Yeah.
Everything was problematic. Anyway, so It was in the course of doing this that Courtright was a part of a posse trying to remove 2 ranchers who refused to go from their ranch. The posse successfully removed the ranchers by forcing them to march to a ravine and shooting them. Who would have guessed?
You don't even have to pack, honey. Let's go.
The ravine is smart, though, because then they didn't have to bury them or anything. They just kind of fell in the ravine. The end.
This show is making us messed up in the head. Leslie just went, it's an easy death because you just shoot them when they sail on down in the river. And you know what's sad? I saw the logic in that. I went, yep, Leslie's right. That makes total sense. What the hell? After this crime was reported, Courtright reverted to lawman status, and how convenient. Courtright reverted to lawman status and helped to arrest the other people in the posse.
What?
Wow.
What?
He's a rat. But the court found out he actually helped kill the 2 ranchers, and they charged him too. Good.
Surprise.
Yeah, good. What the heck is that about? Courtright took off, first to Mexico, and finally winding up back in Fort Worth. He eventually returned to New Mexico to stand trial, and he was acquitted due to lack of evidence. Like Leslie was saying, yeah, no, what is it with the famous, no body, no crime, or what's like, yeah. That's great. Back in Fort Worth, Courtright started a private investigator business. He provided protection to saloons and gambling houses in return for a portion of their profits, which is a really nice way of saying he was shaking down these businesses for money. His reputation as a short-tempered bully who was quick to draw a gun was so known that it was just easier for a business to agree and pay him.
Wow.
About this time, a high-end saloon and restaurant called the White Elephant brought on a new partner, none other than famed gentleman gambler Luke Short. Skilled at cards and fearless with a gun when he needed to be, Short had also been a partner in 2 of the most storied gambling saloons in Western history, the Oriental Saloon in Tombstone, Arizona, and the Long Branch Saloon in Dodge City, Kansas,
Wow.
where he killed a few troublemakers and worked alongside Western legends such as Charlie Bassett, Wyatt Earp, and Bat Masterson.
Well, the Oriental Saloon is where Wyatt Earp worked. He was like a dealer, he was like in charge of the gambling there. And that's where the business with the OK Corral started.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I think it's hilarious that you know this stuff, Susan.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, okay, I'll tell you something else. The Long Branch Saloon in Dodge City, they had some problems there, and they brought all these people in, this Charlie Bassett and Bat Masterson and Wyatt Earp and stuff, to force I don't know what the problem was, I can't remember, but all these people showed up and they had a non-violent war and forced the city to give them what they wanted and pay them money and everything. But I think Luke Short needed to leave town.
Well,
anyway, so he wasn't somebody to screw with. That's
no, Luke Short was not somebody
For sure.
It's around. So anyway, he ends up at the White Elephant, and the White Elephant was successful. But with Short in charge of the gambling, it was raking in serious money. Everything about the White Elephant was elegant and upscale, which Jim Courtright was not. Clearly. Still, Courtright wanted in on the action and went to the White Elephant to offer his quote-unquote services. But Short immediately turned him down. Short told Courtright that since everyone in town was afraid of him, Courtright's presence would be bad for business, and he offered to pay him to stay away, which kind of gets what he wants. He doesn't, get like a share of the profits from the place, but
imagine this. You know what? It's worth it to me to pay you money to not come in here. I mean, that's an assault.
That definitely hurt his feelings, and because he wasn't used to being he wasn't used to being turned down. Even worse, if one saloon turned him down, turned down his protections, his services, then the other saloons would follow suit. Because once you stand up to somebody like a chink in the armor, it's like, hey, we don't have to do that anywhere. So Courtright is like, absolutely not. Couldn't let that happen.
Doesn't this remind me of The Godfather? That movie, The Godfather?
Yeah, it does.
Where they go in there.
Come to me at the White Elephant to refuse my services.
Yeah.
I was just sitting here thinking of a couple of people that I wish I could pay to disappear.
Keep Leslie away from the ravine.
He did not like that he got turned down. He was like, this is bad for business. I don't like this. My ego's bruised. I'm going to lose money. This is my town. What the heck?
Yeah.
So, on February 8th, 1887, Courtright angrily returned to the White Elephant and demanded to speak with Short. Bat Masterson was there, and years later wrote down a first-person account of what happened. Quote, Luke and I were sitting together in the White Elephant billiard room one evening discussing the trouble he had with Courtright and the effect it was likely to have on his business. Just then, one of Luke's business associates by the name of Jake Johnson came to where we were sitting and informed Luke that Courtright was in the outer lobby and would like to have a talk with him. Tell him to come in, said Short. I did invite him in, replied Johnson, but he refused and he said I was to tell you to come out. Very well, said Luke. I will see what he has to say, and immediately got up and accompanied Johnson to where Courtright was waiting. It did not take Luke very long after meeting Courtright to discover that the latter's mission was anything but one of peace. He brought along no olive branch, but instead a brace of pistols, conspicuously displayed. It was not a parley that he came for, but a fight, and his demeanor indicated a desire that hostilities open up forthwith. End quote.
Wow. Forthwith. Serious.
A brace of firearms.
Forthwith. Hostilities open up forthwith.
Brace of pistols were butt out, ready to go.
Anyway, so Short, Courtright, and Johnson walked down Main Street. Probably exchanged a few words. Courtright was reported to be drunk, and he felt disrespected and was definitely hostile. They all stopped in front of Ella Blackwell's shooting gallery. This was probably a brothel.
What would a shooting gallery be, right?
I'm gonna leave that
Leslie's
too.
going, what?
This is very low-hanging fruit. I could make a bunch of jokes, but I won't, 'cause I'm a lady. Anyway, so the pair stood talking, standing just about 3 or 4 feet apart. So not too far away. According to Jake Johnson, who was there, when Short tugged at his vest, Courtright told Short he didn't need to take out his gun. Short either said he wasn't doing that or that he didn't have a gun, which wasn't true. Courtright didn't trust this. He drew his gun and fired. Or he tried to. There are different stories on what happened. The gun jammed, or it might have gotten caught on his watch chain. Maybe the butt out situation was problematic for a sharpshooter, who knows? But before he could try again, Short drew and shot Courtright, causing his body to fall back into the building with his feet still on the sidewalk. Short walked forward and continued shooting Courtright, blasting off his thumb, hitting his right shoulder and through the heart.
Oof.
A total of 5 shots. There are some reports that Courtright died without uttering a word. In others, he was still alive when a police officer by the name of J.J. Fulford arrived. As Fulford leaned over, he heard Courtright's final words, which were, "Bull, they got me." According to Fulford, when he died, Courtright's gun was still in his hand, the chamber full of bullets.
Bull, they got me.
It reminds me of one of those quotes you would hear in an old Western that's like, "You're gonna have to be quicker than that to catch the fastest and the West." Oh, Mae West is in the other room, doing something.
You know what this is? Like somebody that decided to write a Western went to the history books, looked this up, and then repeated it because it's like got the duel in the street and he's got, they got me, Jim, that kind of stuff.
This is what we think of a Western as.
Yeah, it's like the template.
Good guys were few and far between.
Actually, in a real Western, one of the guys would be a good guy. These guys all seem to be not so great.
Shady. Well, I think the line between a good guy and like a lawman and a criminal was fairly porous.
At least in Hell's Half Acre.
So then why is it in Westerns we need a good guy? Because that's how we learn these stories, these Westerns. They teach people this is good and this is bad, but it seems like there was no really good person.
But in real life, it's that way too, right?
Yeah.
It's nobody's all good or all bad.
Because if they were all good, we wouldn't like them.
Yeah, we wouldn't. I'd be like, who the hell do they think they are? So speaking of, no one was that great. Luke Short was arrested immediately, but he claimed self-defense and never went to trial. He did, however, sell his interest in the White Elephant. While Courtright had a reputation as a hard-drinking, brawling, mean-tempered bully, it seems that the whole town turned out for his funeral procession. 6 blocks long. The largest funeral procession Fort Worth ever had. Courtright was buried at Oakwood Cemetery, and 6 years later, Luke Short died. His body was taken back to Fort Worth, where he was also buried at Oakwood Cemetery. So they are post up at the same cemetery.
Gosh.
Timothy Isaiah Courtright, also known as Jim Courtright, was like a character in an old Hollywood Western. He was a soldier, a lawman, a gambler, a murderer, and a racketeer. And we remember him not so fondly. He died in one of the rare face-to-face shootouts in the Old West, even though he never got to take a shot.
Wow.
His death made for sensational headlines in newspapers across the country. The headline in February 10th, 1887 edition of the New York Post read, "He died with his boots on." Just like in the movies.
Oh, wow.
I was Jim Courtright, man. I will say this. Of all the stories we've told, this seems like the most head-on. Most of the stories we tell are like, then 3 idiots got a bunch of explosives and went to Tallahassee with a far-fetched plan to steal the Declaration of Independence with a polar bear and 3 some crazy. And so this one is hey, these guys didn't like each other, so they shot each other. And that was it.
Everyone's going to be wondering where the episode is where they steal the Declaration of Independence.
With a polar bear.
Well, you know what I mean. So as much to say ridiculous circumstances.
The stupid part is to show up to somebody like Luke Short, drunk and mad.
He didn't have the elegance that Luke Short had. Even though Luke Short wasn't super, ethical, I guess. In the classy hierarchy of unethical criminals, Short was higher than Courtright.
If you'd like to know more about this story, you can check the links in the show notes and follow us on social media at The Wild Wild Death.
Thanks for listening.
See you next time.
Adios, muchachos. Mwah. The Wild Wild Death is a 2222 media production.